So it's been about 5 weeks since my last video, and there's a reason for that. A lot of the stuff that was in progress basically took Blizzard multiple weeks to implement, so there really wasn't much to talk about in a weekly format. So here I am now, resuming where we left off on November 4th. These are the changes I talked about in my last video, November 4th, so I'm not going to really go over them again. I've already discussed these changes, as well as my interview with Ian that was discussed on November 5th, that you've seen as well, and if you haven't, then you could go back and watch it. But one thing you quickly notice here with November 11th is it's basically identical to the stuff we talked about on November 4th. Coming soon, it's all the same stuff. There's like one addition, and then the other three are like things they talked about or whatever. And the stuff that's still coming soon, it's all of this minus one thing. Like, this is the only thing they added from coming soon. Everything else is still down there. So as you see, if I were down a video that week, I would have been talking about like one thing. Our spells and auras, which this, even still, this week, wouldn't have been worth talking about because it was work in progress. In fact, that's still not... This is still not finished. 5 weeks after they first talked about it. So I'm not going to talk about it until the end. Under consideration, again, same things. Nothing new. There was some interesting news posts on November 13th. I'm not going to cover most of them, but I'm going to cover a very important point here. They acknowledge right here that they will not be ready for launch. On November 13th, they basically told Addon authors flat out, we will do what we can, but we're going to prioritize based on what's most important at the top of the list, because we will not get through the whole list. They're going to continue working on add-ons post-launch, but they've already said that when pre-patch hits, and even when 12.01 hits, they're still not done. There will be growing pains, and they are fully acknowledging that on November 13th. They said it right here. But they're going to try to make sure the most important stuff is handled. And I can tell you the big elephant in the room that you all guys are wondering is Elvui, right? We'll get to that. November 17th, there was a new beta build. Force interface. This is on the list of coming soon. So it wasn't even a new thing, it was just finally added. They finally forced the interface here. Secret color text was also on the list, so they got 2 things off the list this week. They added this in the previous week, but it had problems. It had performance issues, and it didn't quite format things very good. So they made improvements to it. And that's the whole week. And currently being worked on, it had a couple things added to it. And coming soon, well, it got a little shorter, but it got a couple new additions. But coming soon is not really worth discussing because it's not done yet. Under consideration, it got a new addition. Mythic Plus Trash Count as APIs. Under consideration means they're not actually working on it yet, but they acknowledge it's a pain point for add-ons. There are some interviews here. I'm not really going to cover interviews because they already have videos. And you might have even already seen those videos, so there's no point in me really covering and reacting to them, especially since the videos at this point are stale. This video is still almost a month ago. So you've had plenty of time to see people react to it and everything. I'm not really going to cover it. I'm going to continue going through the add-on changes, you know, the stuff that no one else has actually covered. Beta 3. This one had some pretty significant changes with status bars. And it finally unrestricted unit power, which was, again, something that was on the to-do list. So it wasn't something new. It was just finally done. This is for add-on authors only. It gave add-on authors the ability to test secrets without being in a condition to where things are secret. Like, before this build, it was a pain in the butt to do add-on testing because you had to actually pull a raid boss. You had to actually do a Mythic Plus. You had to actually do PvP. Because outside those 3 areas, add-ons have almost no restrictions. So it's hard to test your add-on when the restrictions aren't active. It just creates a false sense of security. Oh, my add-on's working. No, it's not working. You just haven't put it in a situation where it's broken yet. But they made it a lot easier starting with beta 3. That was pretty huge for add-on authors, but again, it's not something that's very interesting to you guys, because it doesn't actually bring any of your add-ons back. But it was the first beta build to where a lot of us really got to work. Like, some add-on authors, they were kind of dry coding, or like putting the code changes in, but they weren't really in the testing phases yet, because a lot of add-on authors are like one-man teams, and they're not really committed to just running spamming Mythic Plus or raid testing on the beta. So they needed a way to test their add-ons, and Blizzard acknowledged it this week. So starting from basically 12.2, which is really already December, is when the real testing began, DBM included. Now, I had a lot of test or dry coding with edit mode, but this is the first week I got any testing in as well. And then a lot of this other stuff from this week was just bug fixes and exploit fixes, because one thing that we authors have been doing a lot of this beta is continuing to inform Blizzard workarounds we find. We're telling them, we found a way to break your secret here, we found a way to break your secret there, and they're appreciating that, because the last thing we want to deal with, really, either side, is post-launch having all kinds of exploits be discovered and found. And I'm going to be honest, they're probably still going to be found. But both sides, us add-on authors and Blizzard, are doing our best to avoid that, because we really want to deal with that cat and mouse. Like, neither one of us want to. Because if an exploit is found, or a workaround is found, what's going to happen is someone's going to make an add-on that exploits it. And then everyone else is going to make an add-on that exploits it. And I'm forced to make my add-on exploit it too, because if I don't, my add-on becomes less relevant because some other add-on's doing something that mine can't, etc. It's like an arms race that nobody wants. And then currently being worked on, they actually discuss some stuff they're working on in future builds, but I won't discuss them too much because, well, the future builds already have them. Coming soon, they expanded on it again, but one thing that was really good they added that coming soon was aura sorting. But I'll get to that later too. Under consideration, what's interesting this week is this week something really key disappeared from under consideration. Custom unit frame pain points. You're looking at ways to improve the ability for add-ons to recreate unit frames from scratch. That was gone from consideration this week. It kind of left a few of us scratching our head like, wait a minute. Is this Blizzard putting a nail in the coffin for Elvui? Are they just saying F it and we're not going to help you anymore? But I'll get to that in the coming builds. Now beta 4. Now we're going to get to the juicy stuff. Here's the stuff that is what was making it worth making a video for. Action bar buttons and cooldowns. This is making it possible, finally, for action bar add-ons. Or at least steps closer. Auras. A huge category for auras. This was big, and now we know why this was removed. Because I knew it was coming. This right here is the first major step in making it possible for nameplates and unit frames to come a lot closer to matching Blizzard's unit frames and nameplate features. These are the building blocks for tracking auras on custom frames. This right here was one big step closer for Elvui to become a reality again. This, curves. This was also a big step for add-ons to become a reality. And then bug fixes and exploit fixes, which again, I said there was a lot of that over the last few weeks. But this added a bunch of new APIs, like aura dispel type color. Because one thing that was an issue was, if everything's a secret, you don't know, okay, we don't know if that person's got a magic debuff or a curse, so how can we color the raid frame green, or purple, or blue, based on magic, poison, or curse? Now there's an API that returns a color curve. And the color curve is secret too. Everything is secret, but they're still adding ways to do it, so where you can tell that, or ask Blizzard, what color should this be? And they're going to be like, here's the secret color. And you take the secret color and put it into a color curve using the curve feature. And now the add-on can change the color of the frame while still not knowing what debuff it is. It still doesn't know if it's a curse, magic, or disease, or etc. But it can still change the color to reflect it, just like the base UI can. And that's where a lot of the issues were with UnitFrames. Why Elvui said we're putting things on hold, because they couldn't match Blizzard's features. They couldn't do what the best stock UI could. And if they couldn't even match the features, why bother? They were waiting for this. This was one of the biggest pieces to the puzzle right here. To making UnitFrames that weren't crap, put bluntly. And then Beta 4 had some additional stuff, because again, that build got delayed too, and then they rebuilt it again before they shipped it. And it turned out mouseless UI wasn't being worked on. It was done. New APIs were added for accessibility. Big wins for players who don't play with a mouse. Like they play with a controller, but they lost APIs like set cursor to position. Like a dialogue appears on your screen, and you gotta move the mouse to click on it. Now there's an API where an add-on like console port can go set the cursor to the OK box automatically. Accessibility. They're still working on that too, guys. Fix some errors with tooltips, add-on menus. Quality of life stuff. Now, the quality of life stuff, I don't really talk about a lot because it's really just mostly to make it easier for us to make add-ons, which helps you guys just by making sure that you get your add-on updates faster. So it's not necessarily things that make things possible versus not possible in a lot of the quality of life stuff, so I don't really talk about it too much. Duration objects. This is another big thing they added, and it had mostly to do with Castbars. There were some issues with Castbars, particularly with the animation quality of Castbars, or updating a Castbar based on pushback. You know, you took damage, your cast had half a second of pushback, but because everything is secret, you didn't know that, so you couldn't update the Castbar to reflect the pushback. So they're adding more APIs to address issues that weren't thought of immediately, but through testing, they were like, wait, we got problems. You know, our Castbars are breaking if I'm attacked. Now we're already caught up this week's build. And what's the big thing here? Heal absorb and heal prediction. The next big checkbox in the list for UnitFrame add-ons. So you see where this is going. The last few weeks, or the first 3 weeks, there was not much going on, because behind the scenes, they were working on a lot of big things that they were going to dump this week and last week. So like pretty much half of November and the first half of December were weak because they were working on big stuff that wouldn't be ready for multiple weeks. Thus, a 5-week break in my videos. But now you know what's going on. UnitFrames are coming back. And there's still stuff to do. But based on Blizzard's priorities, I can almost guarantee that the one thing that they're not going to let be broken in pre-patch is UnitFrames. And they've heard loud and clear from a lot of players, if I don't have Elvui on patch day, I'm not raiding. I'm not doing Mythic Plus. I'm not even playing this game at all until I can get my Elvui. Now, I'm not an Elvui user, but I've heard a lot of my own guildies say, especially healers, that they're not coming to raid if their add-ons don't work. And Blizzard knows that. So a lot of the past 5 weeks have been addressing the biggest elephant in the room, and that's that. Now coming soon, more exploit fixes and more other stuff. That catches us up on the API for the most part. But now I want to cover some Q&A questions that I came up with based on comments from other videos and things I've seen in the community. Like one big thing, the first question. I've seen players get in the beta and say, My add-ons work. My nameplates work. My UnitFrames work. Everything works. What are you talking about? Nothing's broken. It goes back to what I said earlier. The restrictions are only active in Mythic Plus, PvP, raids. If you're outside questing in the world, your add-ons aren't working. They're just not in a situation to where they're broken yet. There's a big difference. And that's something you guys have to realize from a testing perspective. You might have gone into beta and installed all your retail add-ons and thought, it's working fine. Not really. You just haven't been put in a situation yet to where they've really been tested. Now, they're probably throwing a bunch of Lua errors regardless, because they're probably registering events that don't exist, like the combat log and things like that. But a lot of you guys have to turn off your check engine light and ignore that too. And I want to tell you that too. That's another question and answer I want to put in there. Should you turn off Lua errors? No. They matter. Because if you turn them off and ignore them, and just pretend your add-ons are working, you're going to find out real quickly when you actually do go into a raid, or a dungeon, or a PvP match, and you drop to like the single-digit FPS, and you wonder what the heck's going on? It's your add-ons. Don't ignore the warnings, don't ignore the errors, just because they look like they're working when you're out doing a world quest or something. Now, the next big question, and this is a real big one. Some of you have said, why couldn't Elvui update their add-on when X add-on is already working? This house is a Blizzard-based UI UnitFrames. It's presented exactly like this. This is an add-on that's not creating UnitFrames from scratch, but is simply modifying this, which means that it's getting all its information from this. And all the add-on is doing is this. It's still the same house. You can't move the windows, you can't move the door, you can't change the driveway, or the floodlights, or the roof. This is the house. You might be able to do this, but it's still the same house. These are the add-ons that are working now. The add-ons that don't build it from scratch, but simply match Blizzard's features because they're not the ones providing the features, Blizzard is. But they're limited to what they can do. No matter how much you change how it looks, it's the same house. Elvui doesn't use this. They build their own house. And their house might be a different shape. The different roof. The door might be over here. But now here's the problem. Because Blizzard has no restrictions on secrets, they have access to all the information there is. Elvui did not. Elvui doesn't know what color the house is. Elvui can't put a driveway in because they don't have enough features for it. This is Elvui. That's the problem. Which house are you going to move into? This one? This one? Or this one? And you guys might be wondering, well, why don't Elvui just do this then? Because that still means taking everything that they have and doing this. Years of work. Gone. And they can just wait for this. And then build their own house. That is why they put development on hold. They weren't being assholes. They weren't being whiny. I've seen a lot of people attacking them for this. They just wanted to build the house they wanted to build the way they wanted to, but they had to wait for it. They need access to the information so they know what color the house is, what color the door is, what color the roof is. They need to be able to build a driveway. The driveway being, you know, healing absorbs or whatever. I hope this metaphor makes it much clearer why Elvui halted development, rather than just doing this. And I hope you like my drawing skills. Aren't they beautiful? The next question. What about WeakAuras then? Why can't WeakAuras continue to have the add-on updated in midnight? The answer is simple. Blizzard is not giving WeakAuras this. They don't want to. There's been a lot of argument from the community on if the game has a built-in cooldown manager, why can't WeakAuras be an alternate cooldown manager? Because Blizzard says so. WeakAuras genuinely cannot make an add-on midnight that's worth a damn. At most, they can make an add-on that gives you basic WeakAuras that work outdoors, like the little profession helpers that had WeakAuras. But like when it comes to like PvP, raid, and dungeons, the add-on be totally and utterly useless. Even as an add-on that only just reskinned your cooldown manager, because Blizzard doesn't even want to do that. And that's something that the WeakAuras team has been adamantly vocal about, because even they agreed that encounter WeakAuras should be broken. Not in a million years they think that Blizzard would also break their ability to be a cooldown manager, especially since the cooldown manager is built into the game now. They thought if it was built into the game, why not let add-ons also still be able to do it too, as long as it's not like exceeding or superior to it in some way that made it still a mandatory add-on. But to this point still, Blizzard has held adamant that they want that add-on dead. Contrary to previous statements, they want that add-on utterly and totally destroyed. So it's not the WeakAuras authors being stubborn or lazy or greedy that's making them not update the add-on. It's there literally being no feasible path to do so. And that's the state of WeakAuras. Another elephant in the room question. Did Blizzard have to go this far? No, they didn't. They could have broken computational WeakAuras. They could have broken PvP helper add-ons. They could have broken a lot of Mythic Plus add-ons without going as far as they did. They just chose to go way further than anyone anticipated them going. And then they're just kind of slowly recanting it back. Now, how far they're going to go backwards on it, time will tell. I think we won't really know until we actually feel it for real. When this pre-expansion patch goes live, and the majority of players who don't pay attention to Wowhead or Beta get into the game, and Blizzard really starts getting feedback, then we're going to find out if Blizzard went too far or not. But until that time, really only time will tell. Now another question. What's the state of boss mods? Blizzard finally gave us a way to test these things. So I can show you the state of boss mods. Because they gave us a boss mod test dummy. By the way, these are player nameplates. Looks like Blizzard's using variance timers. DVM already supports that. It means they're not exact timers, they got a cooldown window. By the way, all the sounds and timers are from DBM. I have Blizzard's features turned off. This boss has 3 abilities, 1 minor ability, 1 medium, and 1 critical. This is the state of boss mods. Everything's done with secrets. DBM doesn't know what each timer is. DBM doesn't know what spell's being cast. Which is why it has generic alerts and not voice packs. Currently, the state of DBM is going to be generic alerts and generic timers. No spell renaming. No color bar by type of ability, like tank, special, whatever. And no voice packs that say frontal or anything like that. At least right now. As per my interview with Ian a while back, they did say what they're going to allow us to register custom sounds via an API at a future time. They'll let us add custom sounds for spells. But we still won't know what the spells are. But we will be able to at least get rid of that annoying air horn and register a more pleasant sound in a future patch. But I'm pretty sure this is what DBM is going to look like in the pre-patch. Let me get that out of the way. This is what DBM hiding the Blizzard features, but I can unhide them too. And now you have Blizzard's timer. It's up here. And Blizzard's raid warnings are under mine. They look very similar because I've been matching Blizzard's format for a long time. And that's Boss Mods. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.